Hi folks, welcome to another episode of My Life with Robert Burns. Jim Thompson and Douglas Mackenzie here again to talk to another of our cronies from around the Burns world. How are you doing, Jim?
Doing great this evening, Douglas. Doing great.
Good. This is our first podcast of the new year, so looking forward to an excellent year.
Yeah, and it's coming in at the right time of year for that.
Good. Well, you've given me a link to what I was going to say, that because we're getting towards the Burns season, we thought it'd be appropriate to talk to one of our cronies who performs around the circuit at this time of year. An excellent performer she is too. So tonight, cronies everywhere, please welcome Kerry Burley.
Hi folks, good evening.
Hi Kerry, how you doing?
Very well indeed, my friend, very well. Looking forward to doing an immortal memory tonight, hence the evening gown and the tartan. That's not my usual attire on a Thursday evening, but I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Oh, Kerry, we'll just get started. And our first question is always the same. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Of course I can. How long have you got? It's not the easiest question to answer. So I suppose I could say that I'm a mammy, I'm a performer, and I am a teacher of sorts as well. So I've got a very varied life, and I'm fortunate to have that. I'm largely due to being a bit of an eternal student. So I've studied German language, music, humanities, social studies. I've got a master's in education. I've taught at Glasgow Uni, I've taught in Vienna, I've taught in the East End of Glasgow, primarily with English for speakers of other languages and community education in the East End, which has always been a great laugh. I also work in Italy every year. I work with young people over there who are interested in going to universities in English-speaking countries, and the issue for them is that they've got very good written English and they can read it well, but they can't really speak it very well. So I go over and do intensive courses with them for a fortnight and just work on their language and their speaking. So life is rarely boring, gents. I'm very fortunate. It's a hard life having to go to Italy every year, I'll tell you.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
So, but where did it all start? Where were you born and brought up?
I am an Ayrshire lass. I was born in Kilmarnock. Actually, I was born in Irvine Central, as most people in Kilmarnock were. And my grandfather, he was a minister in Kilwinning. He and my grandmother had lived in Arran for many years. But after he got his calling, they went over to Edinburgh for my papa to study. He was a commando, and the commandos paid for him to go to university. And he was a very clever man. Last of 13 Wains from Govan, very Glaswegian, but he made good in the commandos. He made it to sergeant. He was a very well-read man. He was a very articulate man, and he got his calling into the ministry and ended up in Kilwinning. And as a result, I ended up in Kilmarnock. So yes, born and bred with Burns. It's a theme throughout my life, but I'm very, very fortunate to have had some great influences in Kilmarnock that I'll talk about a wee bit later that brought me to Burns. But yes, I now live in Glasgow. I moved up here for university when I was 17, and I met my now husband. We're actually together 25 years in a couple of days. Met him when I was 17. I'm now 42 and we're still going strong. I'd have no idea how he's put up with me for that long, but he's a very tolerant man. So I've also got a wee girl, Maggie, who's just turned 10, and she is quite into music as well. She plays piano and she loves singing and things. So yeah.
Good. And what did you study at university?
What did I study? So initially I did law with French, and then I didn't really enjoy it very much, but I passed my first year. And then I had quite a serious knee operation. I had a knee replacement when I was 18, so I had to defer for a year. And during that time, I had a wee bit of a rethink, and I ended up going back to Glasgow University and doing German and Russian. Instead, I'd always had a real affinity for languages, again, thanks to an excellent teacher at school. And I was a big fan of Russian poetry particularly, so I was quite keen to educate myself a wee bit about Russian history and Russian language so that I could read Pushkin in the original, things like that. And so that love of poetry was always there. So that's what I did. And then latterly, I kind of continued studying with the Open University for many years. Ended up doing postgrads in music and German language and education, as I say. So it's been a really interesting life. And I think I'm one of these people who I've always got my fingers in lots of pies, and it's just because I'm eternally fascinated by everything that's going on. I want to be part of all of it, you know. And my poor husband despairs. Fortunately, he's a home buddy, so he's quite happy to stay at home with a wee one. I should probably mention also that I'm a musician, so I go out gigging every weekend. So I've done everything from classical crossover to ABBA tribute band. With the ABBA tribute band, I toured all over the world, did some amazing gigs, and played venues like the Hydro and the SECC in Scotland and the Albert Hall in London. And so I've been very, very, very fortunate. My hips, however, couldn't really put up with the ABBA dancing anymore. So I eventually gave that up, but I still sing with a soul and Motown tribute band called Soul Sisters Scotland. And I do solo stuff as well, cabaret, pubs, clubs, holiday parks, things like that. And the odd burn supper as well.
So does that take up all your time?
No, so I used to be a lecturer, as I say. Last year, I started a new job with a mental health charity, Bipolar Scotland, and I'll mention a wee bit more about that again later in relation to burns. So I work in learning and development for them, and what I do is I create and develop courses, self-management courses really, for people who are living with bipolar and for their friends and family as well, because there was a real gap there. You know, there was a lot of self-management information for people living with the condition, but not a lot of information for people who were living with the people who were living with the condition, if you know what I mean. So that's been a really interesting year, actually. I've got quite involved with the charity over and above my own job role as well, and it's been a really interesting year. So I'm thoroughly enjoying that as well. So I do that Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, and then usually gigging Friday, Saturday and often Sunday as well. So I like to keep busy, gents.
It certainly sounds like it. So you talked about being the musician. How many instruments do you play?
Oh, I am primarily a singer, but I am a really dreadful guitarist and a dreadful pianist. I'm a typical singer. I can busk my way through songs, basic songs to accompany myself, but I would not call myself an instrumentalist by any stretch of the imagination. But I have a few, particularly during lockdown, a few burn suppers, kind of internationally. I sat at my piano and I performed that way, or had my guitar and performed that way. So that was good.
Tremendous. And you talked about ABBA and classical music. Have you got any preferences? What direction would you go in from choice?
I think at the moment I'm really enjoying the soul and Motown stuff, and the reason being, I mean, the music's fantastic, but it's a really challenging sing. And I think when you're a singer, you know, singing something like ABBA is pretty straightforward. You know, it's not very difficult. I enjoyed the classical stuff to a point, but there gets to a point with classical music where you have to continue to train. And I didn't have the kind of financial wherewithal to do that at the time. So I went down the route of kind of more theoretical music for my master's, and actually married poetry and music, which again, I'll chat about a wee bit later. But preference at the moment is a bit of soul and Motown. I really like singing Aretha Franklin stuff, because it's a really hard sing and it's actually quite challenging, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, I remember many years ago dancing to Tarnal Motown in Cumnock Town Hall.
Absolutely, and it's having a real revival actually, and a lot of people that come and see us. So we do kind of everything from theatres to social clubs. A lot of Northern Soul fans who like to have a wee dance to the kind of Northern Soul tunes like, you know, Tainted Love and Get Ready and things like that. They really enjoy dancing to that kind of stuff as well. So it's great to see. The music's just so good. Everyone just wants to dance. It's fab.
Yeah, and do you do a lot of travelling to perform, or is it mainly in the west of Scotland?
No, all over. So I just actually spoke to my agent yesterday, and I'm going as far as Lossiemouth and Dornoch next year. I've been down to London. I've also been in Germany, Spain, Dubai. So I've been very fortunate. I've travelled all over, but these days primarily Scotland and the north of England.
Fantastic. With all of that going on, any other hobbies and sports? Any other interests?
Just trying to get the weight off from lockdown, really. So I'm doing a lot of walking at the moment, so I put on a bit of weight over lockdown. And it's a constant battle when you're over 40 to try and get rid of it. So, I really enjoy going out walking with my daughter. We're quite fortunate. We've got some really nice parks nearby. And she loves basketball and sport and things as well. So just kind of supporting her in that. But music's the first love. Music and poetry, anything to do with the arts and humanities. I'm fascinated by the history of art as well. I've got a wee thing at the moment. I'm reading about the Renaissance period. That's really fascinating. We're actually, as a family, going to Venice in February for Carnivale. So really looking forward to that. Maggie is only 10, so I'm not going to drag her around every museum, but it's nice to have a wee bit of basic knowledge to share with her, you know.
Fantastic. Well, you've given us a kind of whistle-stop tour of your life outside the Burns world, but I'll pass you over to Jim and get you to talk a bit about Burns, and you promised you'd link it to the bipolar thing as well, so we'll see what you've got to say on that.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty simple from the start. How did you get started with Burns?
Well, again, being an Ayrshire lass, so Belfield Primary in Kilmarnock, Primary 3, I remember very vividly learning an excerpt from Tam O'Shanter. And we had a school-wide competition to recite an excerpt from Tam O'Shanter. So that was my kind of first exposure. In Primary 4, I got entered into the Ayrshire Schools competition for singing, and I sang Afton Water, and again it's still so clear to me. I remember standing up on that stage in Kilmarnock Academy, you know, 8 years old with my wee kilt on, thinking, oh my goodness. So that was my kind of first involvement. I think for a lot of kids in Ayrshire it's a bit of a rite of passage, you know, doing these things. So that was my kind of first involvement. But my mum was also a guitarist and a great singer, so I grew up listening to quite a lot of kind of Scottish songs from her as well. And my stepdad at the time, he was quite involved in terms of going to Burns suppers. He went to a lot of Burns suppers, all stag back in those days, in Ayrshire. So I'm sure he probably made it to Newcomnock a few times, actually. Worked down that way sometimes. I'm sure he probably made it to one of your suppers at one point. So yes, that's how I started. But it was really, I suppose the first time I really stopped and thought about it was Primary 7. We had an excellent teacher. He was terrifying, which was great because my primary school was very, very rough. So I think that was the first time we got any work done, was when we finally got this teacher that could discipline the class. He was called Fran McCrossan and he was from Ayr. And he made us, for homework, learn A Man's a Man for homework from beginning to end. We had to learn a verse a week throughout the year. And so much of the vocabulary was unfamiliar. So there was a lot of kind of cultural education there as well about Scots language that was going on. But I really think that what was important there was the fact that the background that we came from, it's a very working class area. I think he thought the kind of universal message of that, you know, the intrinsic value of your humanity, regardless of your background. I think he thought that would be quite important for us going forward. And as I say, that's the first time I kind of stopped and took notice. I think at that age, I was starting to see a bit of inequality in the world, and I was wondering why people had and some had not. So this kind of really sparked my interest a lot more. But it is quite funny, you know, looking back at that, you know, and I'm going to this supper tonight and I'm dressed in a ball gown, you know, so when we talk about tinsel show and ribbon star, there's still quite a lot of that going on in the Burns world, which is always gives me a wee smile, you know. But yeah, so that was the kind of first one. And yeah, so, you know, as I got a wee bit older and started being more involved with the singing side of things, that was where my first kind of curiosity about the words matching the music came from. So if you look at Afton Water, for example, the phrasing, the musical phrasing is very like a river. It's got that movement to it, that lulling sound to it. And actually in adult life, I went back, my master's in music was to do with translations of poetry into music. So by Schubert translated a lot of Goethe and Rilke poems into music, like Winter's Journey, Winterreise and things like that, you know, song cycles and things. And there's a really interesting marriage between meaning and music and how that's married. So that's something that, again, I'm still very interested in. I'm very fortunate I've got the languages and the music, so I think both of those have a kind of a unique understanding of each other, which is so interesting, so interesting.
And did you follow your enjoyment of Burns as you grew through up to adult life?
Very much so. So again, going back to Kilmarnock, you'll know Jimmy Gibson, who was the World Federation president, 2001, 2002, something like that. Jimmy was a tech teacher at my school at Grange Academy, and Jimmy cobbled together a group of misfits who could perform. I was the singer, and he popped us all in a minibus and took us to Burns clubs and social clubs and things, and we were rolled out to perform Burns music and poetry. And yeah, I mean, it's quite funny actually. I remember the first time we went to a proper Burns supper. I must have been about 14. And my best friend to this day, again, thanks to Jimmy Gibson, Dr. Jocelyn Scanning, who was Jocelyn Nelson, Jocelyn and I had been told that the immortal memory was really boring. So we decided to try and avoid it by going to the bathroom just before I started. But everyone spotted this and we get into a world of trouble for doing it. But yeah, so into adults. So Jimmy Gibson's largely responsible for that involvement. And again, that furthered interest. And I would say it was probably about 4th or 5th year that I started reading Burns independently, you know, without the guidance of an English teacher or something like that. We did do Holy Willie in English class, I remember that. But yeah, that's when I started reading kind of independently, that kind of stuff. Yeah, and I moved to Germany when I was 18, with £200 in my pocket and no language. I didn't speak German at that point. This is before I came back to Glasgow Uni. And with me, I had my favourite novel at the time, which was The Great Gatsby, and I had an anthology of Burns that my great aunt had given me. And that's when I found Burns to be a good friend. And I think there was something particularly poignant because I was abroad, in reading the language and identifying with the kind of natural world and Ayrshire and things like that, things that I was missing about home. Kind of added that poignancy to it for me. So yeah, absolutely. That's the kind of, again, whistle-stop tour of the youth, and the relationship to Burns.
Yeah, it's nice to hear because Jim doesn't get the credit he deserves.
No.
Neither does Jocelyn, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
I first met her at a speaking competition which my daughter was in the final of, and Jocelyn was on the other side. And actually, 2 seconds in, I'm saying to Mrs. Well, she's coming second tonight.
Oh, Jocelyn and I speak every day. We've been best friends ever since. We've been through everything together. And we just actually found out the other day that we were both speaking at the same supper. We didn't know. So
again, she's obviously migrated into Burns as well. Right, and how did you start with the Burns suppers then?
So yeah, the first one was the school one. I'm trying to think actually. I think it was through my first kind of speaking engagement, really. I went to a few Burns suppers with friends. I remember going to the Kilmarnock Football Club when I was singing, and I must have been about 17, and I was just gone to university, and I was very in love with this kind of independence thing. And I remember it was at Johnny Walker's, so they'd put bottles of vodka and whiskey and stuff on the table in front of us, right? And I thought, oh, I'll have a wee vodka, so I'm having my vodka. And halfway through the night, I turned around to the guy next to me and I said, here, we're fair getting rid of that vodka because 2/3 of the bottle was gone. And he turned back to me and he said, I'm not drinking. And then I thought, oh my God, then I was suddenly drunk and I had to get up and sing Caw the Yows. And I think it was the most club singer version of Caw the Yows that's ever been performed. But no, apart from that, so my first speaking engagement was with Glasgow Light Opera Club, with whom I was a member at the time. We'd just done a production of South Pacific, and I remember them saying, oh, you're from Ayrshire, do you know anything about Burns? And I said, yes, I do a wee bit. So they asked me to do the Immortal Memory. Now, I was only 23, and I'll never forget the horror on the MC's face when I got up to do the Immortal Memory. He was absolutely horrified that A, this is 20 odd years ago, a woman, and B, a young woman, could possibly do this speech justice, you know. But I mean, times are changing in that respect. But so that was probably my first one there. And really since then, it's been fairly constant. Through that Glasgow Light Opera one, I was asked to speak at Pollock Golf Club. I was the first woman to deliver the Immortal Memory there, and then that's where I met my Sandyford contacts that I'll talk about later as well.
Right. Well, you've moved on for that as well. Having heard you do a reply on behalf of the lasses, you've obviously, you know, shifted the envelope a wee bit here.
Well, that's the goal, gentlemen. I'm speaking to the BBC tomorrow about women in burns. And because they're very curious about how it works, because they're aware that a lot of things are stag, and they're interested in Bridgeton Burns Club allowing women to join now, and they're curious about it. So I'm having a wee chat with them tomorrow. There's still a long way to go, but it's lovely to see more women getting involved and, you know, being acknowledged. There are a lot of very good female speakers out there and female performers out there, and sometimes you feel they're a bit wasted just doing the reply, you know. So it's good to see that more women are getting involved.
Yeah, I think the whole scene's changing really, and I would say now that there are definitely many more mixed burn suppers than there are, you know, gentlemen only sort of thing. Although gentlemanly might be the wrong adjective to use. Where are you? What are you engaged in right now in terms of burns?
So at the moment, I am Vice President of the Sandyford Burns Club in Glasgow, and it's a really wonderful club. It's full of musicians, so I've definitely found my place. I was recruited to Sandyford by Stuart Brodie. I'm sure some of you have seen him do his Tam O'Shanter. And I remember the first time I met him and I saw him do this. He'd lined up 5 pints on the table in front of him, and I thought, what is he going to do with this? And of course, he drinks them throughout the poem. And it's wonderful to watch. It's great. It's so engaging. So he recruited me, and since then I've been working with the club as a director, and kind of trying to contribute as much as possible to that. I will take over the presidency in May, and I was saying to Douglas, I'm really concentrating on getting our social media presence kind of more visible. We might be the first Burns club in the world with a TikTok. So
seriously, TikTok.
Yeah, absolutely, because you know that's the way people access information now, and you know so many clubs are disappearing, and you know people are aging, and it's such a shame because you know I actually found out the other day that Glasgow University doesn't have a Burns Society. They've got 400 or 500 societies, and not one of them's a Burns Society. And I was speaking to Jerry Crothers about it, and I'm quite keen to get Sandyford involved with the university to try and set something up and potentially use that as a feeder into Sandyford, because obviously Sandyford's in the area of Glasgow University geographically. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of projects that I've got in the horizon. I'm looking at getting some Creative Scotland funding to do some outreach projects, some arts-based outreach projects to do with burns, because it would be such a shame not to use the musical talent in the club. And a lot of the people in the club are retired and musicians, so they have the time to do that kind of stuff, you know. So fingers crossed. It's all very positive. I've had to learn a lot of things. I've had to learn how to build websites. I've had to learn how to use TikTok. I'm definitely the wrong side of 40 to do that, but it's all been a great experience.
Good. Just from a personal point of view, you're a singer, so what's your favourite Burns song?
Oh, now you're asking. It constantly changes, depending on mood, depending on the year, depending on what's going on in my life. I do enjoy, let me think. I love like Ye Jacobites and Killiecrankie for a good kind of sing-along. That's really, really good. Everyone can thump the table and have a good sing. I like Right for King. It was off for a Right for King. That's a beautiful melody, and it's not often heard. So that's good. So I like the political stuff, but I also love the absurdity of his kind of comedy stuff as well. There's a great musical version of the Brawler, which is really, really fun to sing. I think my favourite two would be by Jon Castle Waugh to sing, but I don't think you'll ever beat John Anderson. I just think in terms of melody, in terms of words, it's just a perfect song. It's really heavy with sentiment, but it's also really relatable. You know, it's part of the human experience, and it's packaged perfectly in 2 verses. So yeah, I think that's possibly my favourite song. And poetry as well has also changed a great deal. I think in my 20s it was probably Epistle to a Young Friend. Because it was kind of a bit of life advice as well as being a really nicely rock piece of verse, you know. But again, I love the comedy stuff. My favourite Burns poem, actually, not my favourite Burns poem, but one of my favourites is Epitaph to a Wagon Mochlin. Do you know that one, Douglas?
Yeah.
Yeah, so lament to Mochlin husbands all, he often did assist you. For when you were hale weeks ago, your wives, they never missed you. Oh, Mochlin wains is on ye gang to school with Hans the Geether. Oh, tread ye lightly on his grass. Perhaps he was your father. Perfect.
Oh dear. Well done for Cloaky Brinty, yourself. I mean, Burns mocks quite openly in quite a lot of his works. Where do you see yourself moving on to through Burns? Are you quite happy with the Burns Club at the moment? Have you any other ambitions?
I mean, I love being part of Sandyford. It's just such a lovely group of people. We all got on so well, and you know, we go on trips. We went to Waverley down the water this year. We did a lovely directors' dinner. It's a really nice bunch of people. So definitely working to keep that club going. We actually lost 3 directors last year, which was very, very sad. And so, you know, it's really trying to kind of attract more people into the club. And yeah, maintain it and move forward with it. And I think I actually spoke to the other directors. I made them set up a WhatsApp group. They didn't like this because we were communicating by email all the time, and there'd be like 30 emails, and trying to work out what was going on was really difficult. So I made them set up a WhatsApp group, but that's been really good, actually. People have been responding well to that. So I actually asked them last month, I said, look, who are we? What is the Sandyford? You know, what makes us different? What makes us good? What's our product effectively? How do we package this? What's our identity? So we got some really good ideas from that, and I think a lot of it came down to the fact that so many of us are performers, and we really want to take that forward. So, individually and as part of the club, I'd really like to do some more creative projects with the club going forward, and just try and do some outreach work. And I've been working with Peter Pringle as well, a little bit. I speak German, and he has some contacts in Germany, so he's really keen to do a joint project with a German Rotary Club. And Paisley, it has to be Paisley and this place in Germany because they're twinned. So I've been kind of helping him a wee bit with the language aspect. I actually translated a speech for him and he was so brave. He did it in German. I recorded it for him phonetically so that he could go and deliver it in German language, which is brilliant, you know. As I say, personally and professional, not professionally, but as part of the club, I would just love to take things forward and really keep igniting interest in Burns, but also in Scots language and Scots culture. And, you know, I was looking at our club ethos, and the ethos is not just about Burns, it's about the maintenance of Scots culture as well, of which Burns is obviously intrinsic. You know, so I think it's really, really important going forward that we do maintain that, especially because people do live online now. The world is a global community now. We are not in these little enclaves of countries anymore. My daughter speaks with an American accent sometimes because she's exposed to so much stuff from the States. So how do we, in a very turbulent global world, maintain that identity? And why are we doing it? What for? You know, so it's lots of fascinating questions to answer, gents. So lots of work to do, but I really enjoy it, and I'm very, very pleased and grateful to be part of the Burns movement.
I mean, one of the things we learned when we started using Zoom was how much more we could extend to Burnsians from all around the world, and get them involved in things. And it was actually quite sad for some of them when we started doing things face to face again, because it meant that they weren't able to participate. So I think more and more we should be using the tools that are available. And your idea using TikTok is tremendous. Yeah. What are you planning to put on TikTok initially? You're planning to put on some songs or some poetry or some dances or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first reel I'm going to do in planning is kind of a video of all the suppers that I go to this year, and just kind of short segments of each one. Some music, some speaking, someone piping in the haggis, just a kind of overview of a Burns supper, to kind of get that out there initially. Obviously it'll be a Sandyford TikTok, so we'll probably use some people in the club to do a bit of performance for us, maybe just have a wee chat about Burns, and similar to this, I suppose, just a wee 30-second, you know, why do you like it? Why do you do it? You know, just a very catchy, straightforward thing. But, you know, I mean, there are so many people abroad, particularly in the States, Canada, South Africa, who in Australia, they've got so much interest in Burns, and it's a really accessible way for them to see some content. So I've got a lot to learn in that respect as well, though I'm learning all the time about social media. My 10-year-old has been a fount of knowledge. So yeah, so we'll see what happens going forward. But yeah, I'm planning to maybe put out one a week initially.
Good. If you want to use any clips of this, just feel free to do that.
No, thank you. That's kind.
That's not a problem. You talked about all the suppers you're going to. How many are you going to be doing this year?
I've cut down this year, 11 this year.
Wow.
The issue for me is very practical, and that is, if I don't gig, I don't earn money. So as much as I would like to be out 3 times a week doing a supper, as you know, most of them are unpaid. So I can't really afford to engage in the season fully, as fully as I would like to. But that seems to be a nice number. 10, 11 seems to be a nice number to enjoy them all, but still have some room to do a pub gig on a Sunday afternoon, you know.
Are you able to incorporate Burns into that professional life?
Not really, although my agent did contact me recently because they knew I was a Burnsian, to ask if I had anyone that could address a haggis for them in Edinburgh. So I did. I contacted a friend of mine in Helensburgh who was willing to do it. So yeah, I mean, I've spoken to them a wee bit about after dinner speaking. They have various people, Craig Brown and all that. It's an entertainment agent. They cover everything. And they're maybe looking into having some kind of speakers account. We actually, at Sandyford, we've actually set up, not just Sandyford, but a few other people as well. We've set up a group called For All That, and it presents people who've maybe never done a Burns supper before with a complete top table and entertainment. So, you know, they would get in touch with us and we would say, right, here's all your speakers, here's all your music. And it means that places that have never really done one before. So we're doing one next year for the Regal Theatre in Bathgate. And my friend actually runs the theatre. He'd come to me and we said, look, I really want to do this, but I don't know where to start. And I said, well, that's fine. I've got your back. I will contact my friends. So we're going to try and get that off the ground as well. And it's just, you know, it's all word of mouth, the Burns world. You know, it's all word of mouth. So having a kind of established group, if people don't know where to start, is probably quite a good thing.
So that's a great idea. Yeah, fantastic. Now, you mentioned the connection with bipolar. You want to develop that a wee bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm really interested. I read in the Herald, I think it was, but was it 6 or 7 years ago that it came out that there was postulation that Burns could have been bipolar. Now, I actually live with bipolar myself. I got diagnosed in my 30s with bipolar, and before everyone gasps and backs away, I am very stable. I live well with it. I look after myself. I have always been okay with it, but it's definitely something that you have to monitor and look after. But yeah, it just helps me understand him a wee bit more. And I always knew I had an affinity with Burns, but seen through the prism of bipolar, my understanding has only been enhanced You know, the thing about bipolar is, if you're slightly high, which used to be my state, you know, it's called hypomania. So you're just speaking very quickly. You might have noticed I do that. Speaking very quickly, ideas come very quickly. You get very excited about things. Dare I say, you develop an unhealthy interest in the opposite sex, and you do everything to excess. You know, you drink more, you smoke more, you do all these things because you're living. You're vibrating a wee bit higher, you're kind of living in a world of ideas and transcending the everyday. And that's when I'm most creative. And I can juggle about 4 or 5 different things at once when I'm in that state. And, you know, looking at how prolific Burns was at particular periods in his life, you know, particularly Ellisland, times like that, where he was producing so much work so quickly. I do kind of think that there probably was a bit of hypomania going on. And then if you look at the periods of the low periods where nothing was happening. Now, obviously, a lot of that was circumstantial. Socially, he was struggling. Financially, he was struggling with his life, which was a very difficult life as well. But this kind of cyclical nature of his creativity definitely suggests that there was something maybe going on there that we would now call a pathology. They wouldn't back then, they wouldn't even 20 years ago, but these days we can maybe call it a pathology. So it's a really interesting thing. And it's been an interesting one. I occasionally bring it up when I'm talking to people, not all the time, but there's an awful lot of reluctance to talk about it in the Burns world. And I think, I mean, a lot of that's to do with the stigma of the condition itself. But yeah, I mean, the fact they can't imagine a world where their beloved bard would have lived with mental ill health because of that stigma. So I think it's pretty irrefutable that he definitely had something going on, something cyclical happening. But yeah, I mean, it comes with poor impulse control as well. And that's actually why I ended up in Germany. I just decided on a Thursday I was moving to Germany, and off I went. Off I went to Germany. And I've done a lot of things like that in my life. And I'm so lucky. I have always fallen on my feet. But yeah, it's an interesting one. So that's why I've ended up working for the charity, because I really felt that I could contribute, as someone with lived experience, that I could contribute something valuable to the charity, because a lot of people who work there, they understand it academically, but they've never lived it, you know. So it's great for people who come to the training sessions to know that I have experience of it, and they tend to open up a bit more and be a bit more confident asking questions. So yeah, it's really, really good.
There's obviously a lot of work to do in that area.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, you know, certainly in the last 10, 15 years, mental health has become a very hot conversation. And I think it can go too far as well, though. I think, you know, people have to understand there is a normal spectrum of human emotion. And I think quite a lot of the younger generation haven't really got to grips with that. I think if they are experiencing some sadness because of something that's happened, which is normal, I think, you know, because mental health is such a big conversation, I think a lot of people are quite keen to attribute that to depression. And I think we've got to be quite cautious with diagnosis and putting people on medication and things, because it's, you know, there is a spectrum of normal human emotion. You will be sad some days, you will be happy some days. That is being human. It's the nature of our humanity, you know. But it's an interesting thing, and I think it's very positive that it's spoken about more.
Good. You're speaking tonight at the Royalty Burn Supper, I think you said.
I am indeed, yes. So Alex Stewart, who is the president of the Royalty, is a good friend of mine. He's a wonderful musician, if you know Alec. He's a great singer and guitarist. And we're actually playing together next week in Cumbernauld. But yeah, he's become a good friend over the last couple of years. I did the Immortal Memory last year at the Sandyford, and Alec was there, and he asked if I would come and do it at the Royalty tonight. I've also got a wee bit more involved with the Royalty as well. The Royalty and Sandyford have got quite a good relationship. A lot of our directors, there's a lot of crossover there. And I love their mission is to produce this book called Burns for Bairns and to put it in every primary school in Scotland. So it's fabulous. It's a really practical, straightforward reason for having these big suppers and raising money, and it's a fabulous thing. So yes, I'm doing the Immortal Memory tonight. I'm looking forward to it. And I'll try not to go on too much. You may have noticed, gentlemen, that I do go on a bit. So,
So no singing tonight.
not tonight. Not tonight. I've got the Oran Moor Burns Supper next Thursday, where I am singing. I was supposed to just be singing, but Karen Dunbar, who was supposed to be doing the reply, pulled out, so I'm now doing both. And then I have to get the sleeper to London because I'm doing the Caledonian Club in Belgravia on Friday night. And I have to get down there straight after the Oran Moor supper. So guitar and all will be going on the train to London for that. But that's an interesting one, actually. They're not having music there. So I've incorporated a few songs. I'm doing the reply into the reply for that. I thought it would be a nice touch to actually have a wee bit of music in the evening that wasn't kind of formal,
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we could encourage you to maybe give us a wee bit of music tonight, could you?
Yes, of course.
Well, before you do, because I'm conscious of time. We on an odd occasion, Kerry, we've got so much to talk about that we end up doing a sort of part 2 of these podcasts. And I'd really love it if you could come back and talk to us about what you've been doing with Sandyford when you get into the chair and start doing your social media stuff. It'd be great to come back and hear how that's going. Would you be up for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something that, we're kind of finding the path of that kind of stuff just now. And I think that so many clubs could benefit from it going forward, just in terms of even awareness raising,
Well, that would be great. Obviously, this is a wee bit shorter than we would normally be doing with these podcasts, but if we're going to do a part 2, we can catch up with all the other stuff at that stage. So if you could give us a wee song before we finish, that would be fantastic.
Okay, my friend, I'm just trying to think what I'm going to sing, because do you know that way everything just flies out of your head when someone asks you to do that?
But you've already mentioned, one of Jim's favourite Burns songs.
And what's that?
John Anderson.
John Anderson. I actually, at Jimmy Gibson's encouragement, sang that in 5th year for the Burns competition, and I won the national competition with it. So there you go. Again, another thing to thank Jimmy Gibson for. Okay. Oh, just as a wee aside, I once dressed up as Jean Armour in Greenock and sat on the back of a horse to serenade American cruise ship passengers while singing John Anderson. That's maybe the most bizarre Burns thing I've ever done. But, okay. John Anderson, my John, when we were first acquaint, your locks were like the raven, your bonny brow was brent, but now your brow is bent, John, your locks are like the snow, but blessings on your frosty palm. John Anderson, my Joe. John Anderson, my Joe, John, we climb the hill thegither, and mony a canty day, John, we've had we in and there. No, we won't utter doing, John, but hand in hand we'll go and sleep together at the foot. John Anderson, my Joe.
Hey, well done.
Thank you.
Fantastic. That was lovely. Thank you very much.
Beautiful rendition. Beautiful.
Yeah, Jim often talks about John Anderson as being one of his favourites.
It's just that the idea of love lasting a lifetime. It's just, and when you see, I'm not going to go into the detail of what it was Burns got the original theory from, it's a body song turned into something
Yeah.
that's utterly beautiful.
No, it's just a perfect song. It really is. Everything about it. The words are perfect, but it's only 2 verses, but it encapsulates an entire lifetime. I mean, how does someone do that? That is an absolute gift, you know?
Well, you've been an absolute gift for us tonight because
No,
you
thank you,
Burley,
Douglas.
Burley, did you get that link? Was that good? Was it?
You should be in the radio.
No, we've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, and it's great. There's so much more to happen, so we look forward to a part 2 of this podcast at a later date. In the meantime, we hope you enjoy yourself tonight,
Thank
and
you.
I hope your audience really appreciate you, as they should. And just to say thanks for telling us about your life with Robert Burns. Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks,
you, Kerry.
gentlemen. Lovely to meet you.